Hey everybody, it's Michael Martin. Thanks for being here. So get some good questions about. I got a few questions I'm going to marry into one answer because unknowingly the folks who asked the questions didn't know that some of the answers to these second and third questions would all kind of tie up. So the good thing is I can kind of marry them together. And the question was in and around like, hey, you poo-poo most indicators. Why is that? So I'll answer that one first. And it's mostly because of my emotional constitution. I found that most indicators aren't predictive. They only kind of tell you what you can already see with your own eye. And I emotionally I can see my equity, right? And I've adjusted my trading behavior to based on what I've witnessed on my own behavior, which I can't deny. It's the truth. But I don't need the reassurance or the confirmation aspect of the indicators to tell me what I can already see. My equity's up. I don't know what else I need to see to make me feel good about that. And obviously, if I didn't have good luck, good timing, or good analysis, the equity wouldn't be up. It'd be some other reason. And I already made that adjustment, which I think we spoke about maybe Monday on not getting into my optimal size in my initial foray on that trade, right? I don't put my optimal size on in one fell swoop. I kind of step into the water and I wade my way into a bigger spot. And then I can stay where I want to be if the market behavior, which I'm powerless over, unfolds the way I need it to. And if not, I get stopped. But at that point, it's just a function then of figuring out how much of the unrealized gains am I willing to keep at risk in order to stay in that now optimal size. You see? Some of you might be like, you're doing it all wrong, you idiot. You don't know what you're doing. Why is that? Well, because if you looked at the dollar value of what I might be willing to risk in order to stay into the trade, that very well might be the spot where you're in fact taking profits. So my behavior might look like madness to you, but it's not what's better. It's just what's better for you, right? So we talk about attitude. You talk about your approach. You talk about your market feel. You talk about how you create your alpha and how do you do what it is that you do to make your money, knowing that you got to sleep at night. So most of those indicators, I can't think of one that I really would say recommend, like you'd want to put this on the chart. Like, yes, you can use ATR, but that's really just to give you an objective measurement of what the vol is over any, say, 20-day period of time. And you can use that uniformly across all the instruments so that it's a forced sense of objectivity. You're not kind of guessing. It is what it is. The calculations are clear on how you can do it. And, ATR been around since 1978, so it's not necessarily new. But again, when you look at the history of markets, it's not really that old either. Having said that, I'm going to have a good buddy of mine. His name's Brian Shannon. You probably know him. I've known him, I think, probably 20 years by now. He just wrote a great book, and I'm going to have him on the show, and we're going to speak about indicators using his AVWAP, which is what the book is about. And we're also going to probably have a strong conversation on volume, because volume can tell you a lot depending on where you are at the chart, right? So we're going to talk about when is an increase in volume good? When is an increase in volume bad? When you conjugate it with the chart, what happens if volume is contracting and the chart's going up? And all these different combinations. You can't do it verbally, right? You have to see the video of it and see the chart and what we're getting at. And, there's probably a good discussion that we're going to have using real life examples and examples from his book about, looking at price and volume, because the two, institutions leave footprints. And as what you probably consider yourself as a smaller speculator, it's important to know what the institutions are doing because they've got the money. And if they turn the light switch on and you're nimble enough, you could be the mouse that's tap dancing between the feet of the elephant, you see? And that's good. So when you see enormous amounts of buying pressure coming into a marketplace like that, and you have a position on, and the institutions are just getting warmed up, right? Because they have so much money, it doesn't make sense for some of these places to have 25, 50,000 share positions because it's not going to move the needle. If the stock doubled or tripled, it wouldn't move the needle. You see? That's why a lot of these bigger hedge funds and CTAs don't trade some of the softs, because the volume and the open interest just isn't there. And if they bought the whole market, who's left to sell to? That's the whole other question. But how does that serve you? Right now, again, you can do in commodities, they have something that's completely foreign to the equity space where you call cash and carry trades. So you look at the carry charges from one expiration to the next, and you might be able to, if you have the money, to say buy, back in the day, the Commodities Corporation guys did an example of this using pork bellies, which don't trade anymore, because they could buy the futures and stand for delivery and then sell them in the physical market and make more of a spread. So they bought the physical, sold the futures against it, right? And they would basically, so it's a cash market trade. You're in the physical business at that point. You're not just trading futures. So there are all these different ways that you can make, money based on the spreads and what the margins are, and based on where the volumes are, but also based on if you have a certain amount of volume, you definitely want to know, I misspoke. If you know what your optimal position size is, you absolutely need to know what the average volume is for that particular instrument, because you don't want to be the whale. There's nothing to brag about. If the thing's trading 100,000 shares and you got 20,000 shares, that's problematic, right? Because if everyone heads for the door at the same time and you got a lot of inventory, you're gonna find it hard to get out of that position without an enormous amount of slippage and skid, which makes a losing trade even worse. So be mindful of all of that. I know that's a lot to think about. Trust me when I tell you, when you make enough mistakes, it becomes second nature, because you're like, man, that was stupid. Not doing that again. Make no mistake about it. I've lived it. So I'm not immune. Having said that, volume is important. And so to me, if you understand the volume of the volatility of the instrument and how that movement can affect you based on the number of shares that you have or the number of standardized contracts that you have, you can kind of understand what the volatility to your portfolio is going to be. And that's an important thing, because you want to be able to be in winning trades, let them be volatile, and still sleep at night and not have any hair trigger response on your trades. Because if the move is going to be $50 and you took $12 out of it, that to me is something I would reprimand a trader on, because you can't feel good about taking only, say, 1/4 of the move. Now, granted, there's certain circumstances where that might not necessarily be the case, but over hundreds and hundreds of trades, it makes no sense to me to get into a winning trade and to cauterize that trade and then watch the bigger, see the thing move 3 times your gain in the same direction when you're already in the winning trade. So Brian and I are going to talk also about staying power and how to position size so that you can take the risk home with you. I'm not trying to convert anybody, but I do know if people talk about risk and reward, you're not going to get paid if you don't have the risk in the portfolio. So if you have a trade that's working in your favor, you might as well stay with it, at least to some degree, right? My thing is to be in a winning trade and then to add to that winner. Some people would look at where I'm getting in and getting out and then being like, all right, well, not where I'm getting in and out. Some people might look at where I'm adding to my second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth unit. They might be like, that's where I'm taking profits. Especially if they have like that 1R to 3R kind of a deal that I've spoken about. You risk 1R, whatever that percentage that is. If it gets to 3R, you take all or part of the trade off. That's awesome. If you take all of it off, I can tell you right now with 100% certainty, you're never going to have a 5 or a 10R winner. Unless, of course, you have a name and you wake up and there's a takeover. But you can't run a trading business based on, guessing what instruments you're trading and where, when or what and why and how takeovers could happen. You can look at unusual option activity to kind of see, but even then it's kind of hard to figure out why are people doing what they do, right? That's the big mystery. So, any rate, coming up on 10 minutes, don't want to blather along here, but we're going to have a fairly substantial discussion on volume, coming up. And to me, if you look at, the upward trend, you can measure volatility somehow so that you can know what the optimal position size is. And optimal doesn't have to be all in one day, but then you understand how volume works. To me, that's about 95% of what you need to know. Then you do this more and more, and you develop a feel. As I said, I think last Wednesday when we talked about, the sudden passing of Michael Marcus, you want to kind of understand how other people are going to behave. And that would probably go under the chapter called Market Feel, where a lot of it's just based on an innate ability that you have that's not necessarily attached to some type of an indicator, right? Sometimes you hear people say, yeah, the tape's heavy, right? That's kind of what they're getting at. It's not just that things are down. It also takes into account the sentiment. It also takes into account if small or intraday rallies, what are they met with? Do sellers show up to beat it down? Do they have any staying power? So that would be very, very helpful. So I wouldn't necessarily worry about chart patterns or indicators. I would take a look and see, like, who cares about the name at key inflection points on the chart? The only way to do that is to conjugate it with volume. And we're going to talk about that with my good buddy Brian Shannon and look at his book. I don't have any financial interest in his courses or in selling the book. I'm just doing it because he's a buddy of mine. And yes, we're friends, so it's probably going to be a friendly chat. He's a very talented guy. You could see him Alpha Trends. Website is alphatrends.net, and he's all over social media accordingly. So hope that helps. A lot more to talk about. Looking forward to it. Please like and subscribe to the channel, and please send me any constructive criticism of what you'd like to see or what you'd like me to talk on about. If you disagree with something that I've said, please let me know too, because usually that happens when I don't give enough context, right? And if I want your opinion, I'll give it to you. No, just kidding. Just kidding. I appreciate you all being here. I appreciate how you're helping grow the channel, and I'll see you next time. Okay, everybody, thanks for being here. Please take a minute, like and subscribe to the show. You could also leave a comment. I don't have all the answers, so it's good to get some feedback. Also, if you would like to support the show, check out the links below. You can get the free audiobook of The Inner Voice of Trading, and also information about the course that I teach with Victor Sperandio. Thanks for being here, folks. I'll see you tomorrow.